Before billions of people whispered, Despacito. Before sold-out arenas lit up with phone lights and emotion. Before the world crowned him one of Latin music's greatest modern voices. There was a sensitive Puerto Rican boy with a dream so huge it eventually crossed every border, every language, and every continent. But Luis Fonsi's story isn't just about fame. It's about migration, sacrifice, heartbreak, reinvention, family, and a man who spent decades turning emotion into music people could feel. Because behind the polished smile and romantic ballads is a journey filled with pressure, pain, resilience, and legacy. And the deeper you go into his story, the more fascinating he becomes. Early life, the boy from Puerto Rico. Luis Fonsi was born Luis Alfonso Rodriguez López Cepero on April 15, 1978, in San Juan. He grew up in a culturally rich Puerto Rican environment where music was everywhere, in homes, on streets, during celebrations, and inside everyday life. But young Luis wasn't just casually interested in music. He was obsessed with it. Even as a child, he reportedly loved singing constantly and admired legendary artists across Latin and American music. While many children dream vaguely, Fonsi already had unusual focus. Music wasn't a hobby, it felt like destiny, and there was something else about him people noticed early. He had emotional sensitivity. That emotional depth would later become the superpower behind his music. Because Luis Fonsi never became famous for simply hitting notes. He became famous for making people feel those notes. His parents, the foundation behind the star. Luis Fonsi was raised by his parents. Alfonso Rodriguez, Delia, Tata, López Cepero. His family environment was loving, disciplined, and deeply supportive. Unlike many celebrity stories filled with instability or dysfunction, Fonsi's upbringing was relatively grounded. His parents encouraged structure, ambition, and education while also nurturing his artistic side. And that balance mattered enormously later in life. Because the entertainment industry can destroy people emotionally if they enter it without strong roots. But Fonsi's family gave him identity before fame ever gave him attention. His mother especially played a warm and nurturing role in his life, while his father reportedly encouraged discipline and commitment. Together, they helped shape a boy who would eventually handle global fame without completely losing himself. His siblings and family dynamics. Luis Fonsi also grew up with siblings, though his family has largely stayed away from the spotlight. That privacy became important later because while Fonsi became an international celebrity, his family life remained surprisingly protected compared to many stars. And honestly, that privacy probably saved his peace. Many celebrities become consumed by public exposure, but Fonsi always kept a strong separation between performance and personal life. Even at the peak of his fame, he rarely turned family into spectacle. That says a lot about his values. Moving to the United States, a life-changing transition. At around age 10, Luis Fonsi's family relocated from Puerto Rico to Orlando. This was one of the biggest turning points in his life. Imagine being a young Puerto Rican child suddenly thrown into a completely different environment. New culture, new schools, new language pressures, new social realities. That transition could have broken his confidence. Instead, it sharpened him. Music became his emotional bridge between identities. And in Orlando, his talent began exploding publicly. School life and musical development. Fonsi attended Drive, Phillips High School in Orlando. This is where his artistic gifts became impossible to ignore. He joined vocal groups and school music programs, quickly earning attention for his smooth voice and emotional delivery. One of the groups he performed with was called the Big Guys, a local vocal ensemble inspired by popular harmony groups of the era. Even then, Fonsi carried himself like someone born for the stage. Not arrogant, not flashy, just naturally magnetic. Teachers, classmates, and local audiences reportedly recognized that he possessed unusual star quality. And here's what made him special. He didn't sing at audiences. He sang to them. That emotional intimacy later became his trademark. Educational background, the scholarship that proved his talent. Luis Fonsi's growing talent eventually earned him a scholarship to Florida State University. That's a major achievement. This wasn't luck. This was proof. At the university, he studied music seriously and developed stronger technical abilities in vocal performance, composition, musical arrangement, performance discipline. But destiny started knocking early. Before finishing his studies, Fonsi began receiving real opportunities in the music industry. And once the doors opened, they opened fast. The start of his career, the birth of a Latin star. In the late 1990s, Luis Fonsi officially entered the Latin music scene. His debut album, Comenzare 1998, introduced listeners to a fresh young singer whose romantic style instantly connected with audiences. The timing was perfect. Latin pop was growing globally, and Fonsi arrived with exactly the kind of emotional sincerity audiences craved. His voice was smooth but powerful, sensitive but masculine, romantic without sounding artificial, and fans fell in love quickly, especially female audiences. But what truly separated him from many artists was authenticity. He sounded believable. When he sang about heartbreak, longing, or devotion, people believed every word, becoming a Latin pop powerhouse. Throughout the 2000s, Luis Fonsi became one of Latin music's most important romantic voices. Album after album strengthened his reputation. Songs like No me doy por vencido, Aquí estoy yo, Quien te dijo eso, Nada es para siempre, became emotional anthems for millions. His concerts evolved into giant sing-along experiences where audiences connected deeply to his lyrics. And while many artists faded with changing trends, Fonsi adapted carefully without losing his identity. That's harder than people realize. The music industry constantly pressures artists to reinvent themselves. Some lose authenticity trying to stay relevant. But Fonsi maintained emotional consistency. That's why fans stayed loyal for decades. Personal struggles behind the fame. Despite his success, Fonsi's life wasn't emotionally simple. Fame created pressure, public attention intensified, and his personal relationships became headline material. The romantic singer now faced real-world emotional storms. And some of those storms became painfully public. Marriage to Adamari López. Luis Fonsi married Puerto Rican actress Adamari López in 2006. At the time, they were considered one of Latin entertainment's most beloved couples. Fans adored them, media followed them obsessively, and they seemed deeply connected emotionally. But life became incredibly difficult when Adamari battled breast cancer. That period reportedly placed enormous emotional strain on the marriage. Illness changes relationships profoundly. Add celebrity pressure, media attention, emotional exhaustion, and public scrutiny. And the situation becomes extremely intense. Eventually, the marriage collapsed. Their divorce in 2010 became one of the biggest celebrity relationship stories in Latin media. And because Fonsi's public image revolved around love and romance, many fans projected emotions onto the breakup. Some supported him, some criticized him, some blamed both sides. But underneath the headlines was a painful human reality. Two people who once loved each other deeply could no longer make the relationship survive. Emotional fallout and public criticism. After the divorce, Luis Fonsi faced heavy criticism from parts of the public and media. Celebrity breakups are brutal because outsiders often believe they fully understand deeply private emotional situations. Fonsi largely stayed composed publicly, but emotionally, it was clearly a difficult chapter. And this is important. Artists who create emotional music often absorb emotional pain more intensely. You can hear that maturity and emotional weight in some of his later work. Pain changed him, but it also deepened him artistically. Finding stability with Águeda López. Eventually, Luis Fonsi found love again with Spanish model Águeda López. Their relationship brought a calmer energy into his life. Less chaos, less public drama, more stability. The couple eventually married and built a family together. Fans noticed something different about this chapter of his life. He seemed more peaceful, more emotionally centered. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't destroy people. Sometimes it teaches them what kind of love they truly need. Fatherhood, the softer side of Luis Fonsi. Luis Fonsi and Águeda López welcomed children together, including Michaela, Rocco, Fatherhood transformed him emotionally. In interviews and public appearances, Fonsi often reveals a deeply affectionate side when discussing his children. And it changed his priorities. Global fame suddenly mattered less than emotional presence. Because eventually, even the biggest stars realize something. Crowds scream today, then move on tomorrow. But family becomes permanent. His children became part of his emotional grounding. A reminder that beneath celebrity identity, he was still simply Luis. A husband, a father, a human being trying to balance love and ambition. Despacito, the song that changed global music forever. Then came the moment that elevated Luis Fonsi from major Latin artist to global phenomenon. In 2017, he released Despacito featuring Daddy Yankee. And music history exploded. The song became more than a hit. It became a cultural earthquake. Its rhythm, melody, sensual energy, and infectious hook turned it into one of the most streamed and viewed songs ever created. Then the remix featuring Justin Bieber pushed it even further. Suddenly, Spanish-language music dominated global charts. International audiences embraced Latin pop at unprecedented levels. Streaming platforms witnessed record-breaking numbers. And Luis Fonsi became one of the most recognizable artists on earth. But here's the crazy part. Fonsi wasn't a brand new artist when Despacito happened. He had already spent nearly 2 decades building his career. That's powerful, because overnight success often hides years of invisible work. Despacito wasn't luck. It was preparation finally meeting the perfect moment. The pressure after global success. After Despacito, expectations became enormous. How do you follow one of the biggest songs in music history? That pressure crushes many artists. But Fonsi handled it with surprising maturity. Instead of desperately chasing another viral phenomenon, he focused on longevity, artistry, and consistency. And that's why he remains respected. Not just famous. Respected. There's a difference. His personality, why fans connect with him. One reason Luis Fonsi has remained loved for so long is his personality. He comes across as warm, humble, romantic, emotionally intelligent, family-oriented. Even after global fame, he rarely projected arrogance or chaos. That emotional accessibility became part of his appeal. Fans didn't just admire him. They trusted him emotionally. That's rare in celebrity culture. Awards and achievements. Over his career, Luis Fonsi has accumulated massive success, including Latin Grammy Awards, Billboard Latin Music Awards, international chart records, billions of streams and views, global touring success. But beyond trophies, his real achievement is cultural influence. He helped normalize Spanish-language dominance in mainstream global music. That changed the industry permanently. His legacy, more than Despacito. Some people mistakenly reduce Luis Fonsi's legacy to one song. That's a huge misunderstanding. His real legacy includes decades of emotional Latin pop music, helping globalize Latin music, influencing younger artists, breaking language barriers internationally, representing Puerto Rican culture proudly. He proved that artists don't need to abandon their language or identity to reach the world. That message inspired an entire generation. And emotionally, his music became part of millions of people's lives. First loves, breakups, weddings, heartaches, memories. That's the kind of impact statistics can't fully measure. Luis Fonsi's story is beautiful because it isn't just about success. It's about evolution. A Puerto Rican boy moved to America carrying dreams and uncertainty. A sensitive young singer turned emotion into artistry. A man survived heartbreak, criticism, and pressure without losing his softness. And eventually, he created music that made the entire planet sing together. That's not ordinary fame. That's legacy. Because long after trends disappear and charts reset, people will still remember the feeling his music gave them. And sometimes, that's the most powerful immortality an artist can achieve.